Richard Holden is the Conservative MP for North West Durham, and he's a member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Gambling-Related Harm. Richard Holden, what are your worries about what's happened with Football Index?
Well, I think there's a huge concern really around first of all, the initial regulation that went on. And secondly, the fact, as your guest, who has, very sadly looks like, may have lost a very significant amount of money. The terminology that was allowed to be used by Football Index, investing, trading, when all of this was, nobody actually had shares in any of these players in any way. It was all a theoretical, created gambling system set up by Football Index, which has now collapsed. It's really it's so important that the Gambling Commission now, as part of the review, are looked at in a whole-scale way, because we just cannot have collapses of this size with so many individuals across the country being impacted by it. It is a major, major concern.
We asked the Gambling Commission, the regulator, about customer funds that were left tied up in Football Index. It told us people use gambling operators at their own risk. It said operators licensed by the Gambling Commission must keep customer funds in a separate account, but there's no guarantee that customers get all their money back. It says its remit doesn't prevent companies getting into financial difficulties, and they say that when they license operators, they do look at financial circumstances, but they don't monitor them day to day. What do you say to that?
I just think it just sounds like a cop-out to me. We've heard that the chief exec of the Gambling Commission is now going to be standing down, but on the Gambling Commission itself, I think they've been behind the curve, not just on Football Index, but over the last few years. It's only by pressure from people like myself and the APPG on gambling-related harm that we're seeing the threshold at which people can gamble online raised to 18. It's only by pressure from without that we're seeing better regulation. It's only by pressure from, again, members of Parliament and the public and a huge amount of charities there to support people with gambling and gambling addiction problems that we're seeing this new review, which is being put through by the government at the moment. It took us a long time to get there, but now with this issue with Football Index, I think it just goes to show that there are a huge plethora of issues here around gambling that were exploded by the 2005 Gambling Act. At the time, I don't think anybody really had any idea of how much gambling would take place then online. But we've now seen a shift that the majority of gambling is taking place online, and the lack of regulation is really, really disturbing. And it's seeing people lose huge amounts of money, and also being conned into the idea that they're really trading a product when it's a theoretical and created gambling system. And I think these are real problems that we have got to face up to very quickly.
Many of the traders we spoke to, they're young or middle-aged men who really love football. They couldn't get their bets on with online bookies because they sometimes won. Now, when this company ran into trouble, it changed its terms and conditions while these people's stakes were still in play. It's hard to think of any other consumers who'd be treated like that, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. And James Wild and I, who's a member for North West Norfolk, on the Public Accounts Committee, we did a review of the Gambling Commission for the Public Accounts Committee at the back end of last year. And it was quite clear to us that this lack of redress for consumers is such a major issue. If you have an issue with your water or your gas, you can go to somebody. If you have an issue with your broadband, you can go to somebody. But if you have an issue with, and this is a real concern around gambling, people put a lot of money at stake potentially in these areas, and there is very limited redress. There's a plethora of basically industry-owned means of redress, but they're just not independent. One of the things that we're really pushing for now, and has to be part of the Gambling Act, is a proper gambling ombudsman, so that people know that there is somebody independent they can go to get redress. It's an absolute disgrace that isn't in place at the moment and wasn't thought of back in 2005 as something so necessary, but it's something we've got to get in place now.